Anyone can orchestrate a murder, but no one wants to do the hard part of actually murdering. I just got back from my flight and I'm gonna tell you all the books while I'm very jet lagged. But I think that's a good indication for the level of effort that I put in this channel anyway. If it's any consolation though, I'm gonna distract you once again with book giveaways like I do for every wrap-up video. I got this one book in the mail that was unsolicited. It's called If the Shoe Fits. I think this publisher just had like my address for some reason. This is a modern day Cinderella retelling and it's like a cute little contemporary romance. I don't plan on reading this, so I'll just give it away to whoever is interested. And then the other book I'm gonna give away is Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo. This is a book that I did read and I'll talk about in the wrap-up. Details will be in the description below, international shipping and everything. You know how it goes. The books that I read in June were mostly audiobooks, so I think it would be very fitting to plug in Audible, which is the sponsor for today's video. Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment that's all in one place. When you sign up to be a member, you get 1 credit every month that you can use for any title in their premium selection, and then those titles are forever yours to keep in your Audible library. You also get full access to their Popular Plus catalog, which is filled with thousands of audiobooks, but also some original content, some podcasts, some guided fitness and meditation. They even have ad-free versions of your favorite TV shows. All of that is included in your membership, and you can download and stream that whenever you want, and you don't even need credits for that. New members can try Audible for 30 days without paying anything, including getting access to that Plus catalog. The Audible app is free. You can download it on your phone or your tablet. You don't even need like a Wi-Fi connection after you download the book. And if you pick a selection, you're listening to it and you're not feeling it, you can just swap it out for another. One audiobook that I listened to recently is one that I'll be talking about in this video, which is Ask Your Age, Eve Brown. Because the books are like a romantic comedy and the characters are always snarky. So you have this British narrator who's giving all this spunk and sass into the dialogue, and it just makes it a lot more fun to hear compared to physically reading. So if you're interested, you can visit audible.com/readwithcindy or text Read with Cindy to the number 500 500. Once again, that's audible.com/readwithcindy or texting Read with Cindy to 500 500. Let's dive into the books I read in June as I try to remember what I read in June. Usually I talk about these books in chronological order from when I read them, but I think for this video, I'm gonna go from books that I liked the most to books that I liked the least. You know, just starting off positive first before we get to kind of the questionable shit. So the first book is Eve Brown. This was the 3rd book in the Brown Sisters trilogy, where each book follows a sister from the Brown family. Each book also has them meeting a hot dude and they fall in love. So this one follows Eve Brown, who is the youngest sister. Her whole deal is that she's very flippant and flighty. She doesn't like stick around to things for too long. She has like a very chaotic energy where like she just goes with the flow even when it gets all messy. Out of all the sisters, I think I'm the most similar to her because the other two had their shit together, and Eve Brown was just like, well, my life is kind of falling apart, but I'm just gonna roll with it. The difference between me and her though is that those 3 sisters have a trust fund, so they're just fucking chilling. Every time I read one of their books and I remember that they're rich, I'm like, god damn it, you're hot, you're funny, and you're rich. You can't just have it all. That's just not fair. But the plot for this book begins when the parents are kind of fed up with her being a hot mess. So they finally draw the line and they tell her like, listen, you better get your shit together. You better get a real job that you keep, or else you're not gonna have your trust fund money anymore. So she's like, oh, I need to find a real job. Okay, so she's just walking around. She sees this bed and breakfast place that's actually open for interviews. She decides to walk in and do an interview on the spot while she's wearing some graphic t-shirt. I forgot what it said, but it was something really stupid. Like, you know those cheesy graphic t-shirts that have a slogan and like a horrible looking font? That was what she was wearing to the interview. The main guy is the owner of the bed and breakfast place, and his personality is quite different from the main girl because his whole ordeal is that he likes to be in control. He's very rigid about things. He sees this random purple haired bitch with the tacky ass t-shirt walking in, having very flippant answers where she's just like, I don't know, no, you know, I just needed a job. Oh, you're asking me if I have relevant experience? Next question, please. So he's just like, bitch, get the fuck out of here. Like, we can't hire you. But then later, through a series of events, when she's driving her car, she accidentally hits him. He ends up breaking his arm. And so because he can't use his arm to help out with the bed and breakfast, she ends up getting hired anyway. And that's pretty much a good lesson for you to learn when you really are that desperate for a job. If you don't get the gig, you better rev up your engine. Also, if you really want to meet the love of your life, you just gotta pump the gas. Hopefully whoever you hit turns out to be hot. The entire book follows them working together and learning more about each other. Obviously, we start off on the wrong foot, or should I say the wrong arm. I'm fucking tired, okay? I just got off a flight. And this sponsor is due today, so I'm trying to hustle here. But the story really was cute and funny, as it has been for the past 2 books. Out of all of them though, this is definitely the most amusing book. I typically don't like dude characters that are very stuck up and rigid, but I actually found him to be really funny in how he was like a foil to Eve Brown, because he would just get so flabbergasted by all the shit that she would do. Even when he gets hit by a car, that shit was pretty funny, because she was like, oh my god, like, are you okay? And he gets really pissed off and grumpy about it. And she's like, well, would it help if I showed you my tits? And he's like, huh? And then she's like, well, at the interview, you were staring at my chest the entire time. And then he's like, I wasn't staring at your chest, I was reading your stupid ass shirt. The whole bickering is just amusing. But then at the same time, I think the author does a good job at showing why the couple would be good together still, despite their bickering. I also liked that both of the main characters were autistic, because you could see how that kind of gave them a better understanding of one another. And of course, we gotta have the steamy scenes. I really had low expectations for the main dude, because again, he's just this tightly wound up dude wearing glasses and a tucked in dress shirt, and he's just so rigid about everything. But the smut scenes though, I should have known. It's always the fucking rigid ones that all of a sudden loosen up. It's always the quiet ones who are secretly a freak in the sheets. So I'm reading this shit and I'm like, oh, Jacob. There's a line that I wrote down because I thought it was funny. It was from his perspective after they do it, and it said, watching Eve come was like watching the Northern Lights. And I'm like, okay, Sarah J. Maas. Damn, if he's ever lost, all he has to do is find the Northern Star, her pussy. I rated this book 4 stars. I thought it was cute and sweet. One thing that I noticed was that there was a lot of telling instead of showing when it came to their internal struggles. Like with the whole fear of failure thing that Eve had, it was pretty much told to us over and over throughout the entire book in a way that made it so obvious that it was going to create the inevitable third act conflict that happens towards the end of every romance book. I already knew what was going to happen with how they would clash and how they would project their insecurities with one another. And as someone who doesn't like third act conflicts because I find them unnecessary, I'm just like, oh god, just get it over with. The thing about the author though is that she always resolves the third act conflict very quickly. It's almost as if she feels like she's obligated to write the conflict because that's how the story structure should work for these types of romances. So she just does it out of obligation, and then she quickly ties it up so that we can move on to the ending. On one hand, I'm like, okay, well, it's good that we got it over with quickly. We don't have to drag this shit out. But on the other hand, I'm like, okay, so what the fuck was the point of it if you just made up for it like the next chapter? I really liked the first half of the book better because there was all that banter between the characters and it was super funny. But then in the second half of the book, when they have expressed more romantic feelings towards one another and there is a romantic relationship established, we ended up losing the banter, and I missed that because that was kind of like the appeal of the book. Their interactions from that point forward was very similar to the interactions of the other characters in the last 2 books. Once the characters fall in love with each other, they get very gushy and sweet with one another. It's almost like interchangeable with their dynamics when you compare the couples from that point. So I just would have liked to see more of the unique qualities that these specific characters had still be there for the second half of the book. book. The second book that I'm going to talk about is Everybody Else is Perfect. This is a collection of personal and cultural essays written by the former editor-in-chief of Nylon. Nylon was one of the most influential publications, and she became pretty well known because she ended up being the youngest editor-in-chief that worked there. So the essays talk about her experience working in this industry and any relevant topics like internet feminism, impossible beauty standards, how social media affects that, how the magazine that she works for affects that. She also talks about her own personal life because even though on the outside it looked like she was a totally glamorous girl boss, behind the scenes she was actually dealing with eating disorders, and she also was dealing with dating struggles in New York because she is a Jewish lesbian. So it was just her trying to like navigate all these relationships while trying to juggle this very time-consuming and energy-sucking job. I did like it and I was engaged with it, but it's one of those books where I know if I keep on thinking about it too deeply, I would probably bump it down to 3 stars. But I don't want to go down that route because I'm trying to be more generous with my star ratings. I don't work in the fashion industry, but I do work in the ad industry. It was a nice balance of things that were relevant to me and the type of work that I do and my work experience, but not relevant enough for it to be redundant, for it to be like stuff that I already knew. She brings up a lot of topics that I think are super interesting. I don't know if she fully explores them in depth though. So some of the things that she talks about is this whole cult of empowerment and how we commercialize body positivity, because there's like this cultural shift now where we are no longer just only showing skinny bodies. We have to show a full range of bodies like plus size models or acne scars. There's definitely much more of an effort for body diversity, which is great, but it's a weird dynamic when you're working in a magazine or a fashion shoot or just trying to sell something and you are using this idea of body positivity as a way to sell whatever it is that you're selling. There is such a disconnect when it comes to all of these brands that are now talking about body positivity and empowering women and feminism and all of that crap. But then when you look at what's happening like inside the culture within those companies, it doesn't really follow that at all. The beauty industry is a whole different monster in itself that capitalizes diversity, but is still misogynistic and racist and ableist and all the other kind of fun-ists. I also thought it was really interesting when she talks about women's media and women-run business like Refinery 29 or like any of those magazines that are geared towards women, and they're all about like being a girl boss and self-care and being like a boss bitch and all of that kind of stuff. But these businesses are so problematic because they operate under capitalism. So how are you trying to empower these women while also trying to sell them skin cream or whatever product that is meant to make them more beautiful according to conventional society standards? Basically, can anything truly be ethical under capitalism? The last third of the book, when she's kind of like wrapping up her experiences working at those companies previously and where she's figuring out to go next, she comes to this realization about how much she was like a workaholic and this pressure to be constantly productive, and realizing that it didn't truly fulfill her well-being. And I just found that very relatable, and I think it is relatable to other women that I have met in this industry. You work so hard and you hustle like a fucking bitch and you put up with all this sexist bullshit just to climb up and get to the coveted role that you wanted. You got the fucking coin, you got the fucking title, and then you're at the top and you're like, oh wait, I'm still a miserable bitch. And you question your whole life and wonder what your priorities should be. Now, this is definitely not a perfect book by any means. Many of the points that she made throughout the book were very repetitive. There were a lot of times where she would repeat things over and over, not phrasing necessarily, but a lot of themes or points that she wanted to come across. She would repeat them constantly without really adding anything new. So I wish she would at least like expand upon them more, or at least give us some variety, girl. I personally wasn't interested in reading about her personal life, and I think that's just because she didn't give much. I do think there probably is some juicy shit that she could get into because she's like a Jewish lesbian in New York. I'm sure there are plenty of tales to tell, but she didn't really dive into much of that. She kind of glossed over it. It was very surface level because she was trying to balance that out out with also talking about the beauty industry and the work that she was doing. Because she was trying to balance the both of them out, both of them ended up being more surface level. I really think she should have gone all in with critiquing the industry and just ripping that shit to shreds. I know she's seen some shit. She talks about it, like a few anecdotes, but I just know we're only scratching the surface. I'm like, bitch, you better give us the tea. This is pretty much why I would be down to write a memoir someday, because I would want to profit off of my trauma, but I also kind of want to expose a lot of shit that went down in the industry and also on BookTube. Maybe one day if I want to get my coin, I will be sure to expand fully, just the same way that this author should have done in this book. I noticed that she talks a lot about pushing more for diversity and representation, but the weird thing is she doesn't really elaborate more on how she actually improved it. And she did say that she improved it, but I'm like, girl, where? Give me a specific list of what you did. I'm sure she did. I'm not calling her a liar. I just found it weird that she didn't expand more on specific examples on how she did that. As a person of color reading a white woman's book, that kind of made me question things. Again, I'm not calling her a liar, but I'm just like, you keep on saying that you were pushing the needle forward, but I'm not even seeing a needle here. Overall, this book would be better suited to people who actually work in this industry or similar ones. Otherwise, if you're not involved in this industry at all, I think it would be harder for you to get into it because she's just so limited with the way that she describes things or expands upon it. So I don't think you would really be getting much from that unless you have had your skin in the game and been like, I know what she's talking about right there. Next down the list is a 3-star book, Rule of Wolves. When I posted on my Instagram story that I rated this book 3 stars, everyone was so aghast. They were like, oh no, 3 stars to a Leigh Bardugo book? I don't know what you want me to tell you. I just thought this book was okay. I just find it weird every time there is a very hyped up young adult author and you aren't like a super fan of the book, not even like hating the book or disliking it, but just being okay with it with the 3 stars. Like 3 stars is a very neutral rating, but everyone's like, oh my god, the scandal of it all. It's really not a big deal. I feel like people do think it is because they just hype it up so much in their heads. Just because I was really into Six of Crows doesn't mean I'm gonna blindly love everything else that Leigh Bardugo writes. I just wish it wasn't such a big deal whenever you aren't impressed by a very popular YA book. Anyway, so this book is the sequel to King of Scars. In total, these are 2 books that's part of a duology, but that duology is also a spin-off of the Grisha trilogy, which is like this whole franchise that Leigh Bardugo is building up that is now a Netflix show because she's trying to get her bag. I don't think it was necessary to write this series. I think she probably wrote it for like fan service with the characters because Nikolai, the main character, is very popular among the fans. And I'm sure he's very fun for her to write too, but I don't really know if he had enough to write a whole story. And if he did have enough, we didn't even get to see it because we spent so much of this thick ass book being distracted by so many other perspectives of other characters that were not as interesting, were not as engaging, and wasn't really the point of the book. The duology is called King of Scars. That's Nikolai. We're supposed to be following him. And I feel like we didn't really get to explore much of his storyline because it was so thinly divided between all these other characters. Soya, who is the other main character, she's a cool bitch. I honestly would have been just fine with reading about him and her, but instead we got so many perspectives of like side characters. Not even the main characters, the side characters. I'm like, I don't give a shit about them. I feel like if you're gonna expand your franchise though, I think you should do it with new characters. You don't need to go back to the old characters. I can see how it might be tempting because everyone loves Nikolai, but you can make more lovable characters. I believe she's capable of that. One of the other main characters that we follow is Nina, who was one of the characters that was introduced in the Six of Crows duology, which was a separate book series she wrote, but still within the Grisha world. And Nina is also a very well-beloved character. She got paid so dirty in this book because she barely did shit in it. She didn't really do much in the book. She was kind of just like meandering around, which is a bummer because in Six of Crows, she was such a strong presence. In this one, it just felt like she was on the sidelines. The author didn't know what to do with her. There were definitely too many storylines storylines, too many characters. You would be able to enjoy this book if you were like a mega fan. If you were like a Leigh Bardugo stan and you just eat whatever she shat out, you would do anything for her, this book is for you. Because you get to see a lot of characters that have appeared in previous books. And I can see how people will get super excited for those characters that pop up. Even other people were telling me like, oh my god, you need to read Rule of Wolves because you might be excited for who shows up. Okay, but is that gonna serve a purpose to the narrative though? Yeah, I could like this character, but if they're just there for the sake of being there, but they're not serving an actual purpose in the story, or they're taking away what is supposed to be the original point of the story, that's just not enough to like impress me. In terms of fan service, I'm sure it's great. In terms of narrative though, I just felt like it was very long and unnecessarily convoluted. All right, now we're gonna move on to the last category, which are the 2-star ratings. One of the books I ended up rating low was Ash Princess. This is a young adult fantasy book that I actually picked up because a bunch of my friends read it and they loved it, and I wanted to get on the hype train with them. Unfortunately, I must have gotten on the wrong train or something because we just totally were on the wrong tracks. Ash Princess follows a girl who was 6 years old when her country was invaded and her mom got murdered right before her eyes. So that's how you know it's a young adult story, when you start the trauma very early. Her family, her land, and even her name was stolen, and they all got taken away by someone named the Kaiser. She gets crowned to be the Ash Princess, which is a title of shame that she has to bear now that she has to live her new life as a prisoner. Which is kind of like a weird thing to do, because like if you're already gonna kill her mom and take over her land and just commit like a bunch of murder and terrorism, why are you keeping like this random teenage girl around? Don't you know you're basically signing up to be dethroned later? Haven't you read any YA story? This is how revolutions and rebellions start, when your dumbass decides to spare lives. If you're gonna be a colonizer but decide to keep some people alive, that always leaves a chance for you to get killed later on. I'm just saying, if I were an evil dictatorship, I would not keep a bunch of people around just for shits and giggles. So for the next 10 years, she has had to spend the decade pretty much just burying the girl that she used to be, being ridiculed by the Kaiser and his court. And the book starts off with her being ordered to kill her own father in the court. Typical trauma for YA heroines. What else is new? After you murder your dad, that's kind of like a big deal. A big enough whammy to decide that enough is enough. Because this is a catalyst for her to be like, you know what, fuck this prisoner bullshit. I'm gonna start a rebellion and get the fuck out of here. I'm gonna reclaim my land and dethrone the Kaiser, and I may not have a weapon, but I do have my own mind. Because power isn't always won on the battlefield. I'm like, okay, let's see how this bitch uses her brains. Let's see what Ash Princess is all about. Like, why is she so ashy? Does she get lotion in the end? So it turns out that one of the ways that she tries to finesse this whole situation is to seduce the prince. What's funny about this is that seducing the prince was so easy. All she had to do was like pretend to be somewhat interested in whatever dumb thing he was interested in. Like, he was super into boats. There's this one part where he takes her to go see a boat and he tells her who the boat is named after, and then she has to pretend to give a shit. And I'm like, bro. She's just like, wow, that is so interesting. And then all of a sudden he thinks that was a deep conversation. Men are so easy. Speaking of men, you know we can't just have one love interest. We gotta have two so that we can set up the love triangle for this YA fantasy. So the other guy is the guy that is gonna help her plan a way to finesse this whole thing and overturn the Kaiser. He is, of course, the childhood friend, and now he is another person of lower class because the Kaiser took over everything. They planned this whole thing together, but honestly, I couldn't take him seriously the entire time because his name was Blaze. So while she's trying to decide between the prince or a dude named Blaze, I was like, is there really even a question at this point? At least the prince has money. Well, actually, I don't know. It could be a difficult decision because on one hand, you got a dude who's a colonizer, but on the other hand, you have a dude named Blaze. But at least the prince has a big ass boat, and his name is Soren, which is a much more normal name compared to Blaze It Up. I don't even know what the meaning behind that name is. Was he born on April 20 at 4:20 p.m.? So their whole plan is to kill the prince. But even when they set that plan, I knew that shit was very, very unlikely to even happen. These YA bitches never succeed at assassinations because they are too soft. You have this one job and it's to assassinate somebody. We don't have time to waste on you being wishy-washy about being like, oh, I don't know if I should, like, he might be a nice guy after all. And I'm like, girl, it took you one single page to kill your dad. But when it came to possibly killing the son of a colonizer who eradicated your people and stole your land, all of a sudden, that seems to be this huge dilemma. It got to the point where she was so indecisive about every single thing that it just drove me crazy. She didn't contribute to the plan at all. The other characters were telling her what to do, and she couldn't even do it because she was so indecisive the entire time. And I'm like, girl, please, for once in your life, make a fucking decision. But the whole narrative was trying to frame it as if she were this character that was trying to play a chess game in her mind and use all these mind tricks to manipulate people. And I'm reading the text and I'm like, she did not do any of this shit. She did not play an active role in the story whatsoever. And I was so tired of being stuck in her head. I'm like, girl, are you a Libra because you can't make a decision to save your life? She did something that I just could not believe the audacity of this bitch. She comes to the conclusion that she can't trust herself to kill the prince or the Kaiser. Although it is weird that she seemed to have full confidence when it came to killing her dad, aka her family that she supposedly loved. But then with the prince and the Kaiser, she's like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this, you guys. I'm just a newbie with this murder stuff. Me killing my own dad, that was just beginner's luck. So instead, what she does is ask a child to kill the prince themselves. A literal child. She asked the kid to slip in some kind of like poison or something like that. I don't quite remember the details. I just remember how fucking angry I was and how stupid you are that you are committing treason for this very dangerous mission. You are depending this very important role on a fucking child who's never murdered anybody before. The least subtle people in the world are children. They can't fucking do shit. So I brought this up to my friends who read the book and I was like, this bitch is not even doing anything. She just handed the hard work to the kid. And my friends were just like, well, you know, she's helping orchestrate the murder, but she's not even doing that though, because she's not like coaching the kid or anything. She's not like helping plan it out with the kid, drawing a map or whatever. She took no part in orchestrating it because the side characters with Blaze It Up are telling her what to do. So they're the ones doing the orchestrating and she's just like, okay, I guess I'll do it, or maybe I'll delegate the work to a child because there's no way that plan could mess up, right, you guys? Anyone can orchestrate a murder, but no one wants to do the hard part of actually murdering. And then there's this part where she's like, when the Kaiser dies, I want to be the one that burns his body to ashes. And I guess it's supposed to be all badass because it's like, ooh, we're going full circle, because she was crowned the Ash Princess as a symbol of shame, but now she's gonna burn his body to ashes, even though she's the Ash Princess, but it turns out he's the Ash. So we're going a full ashy circle over here. My, how the ashy tables have turned. You thought she was the Ash Princess, but it turns out you're the Ash and she's the one with the lotion. It's so badass because she declared that she's gonna be the one to burn his body. But I'm like, girl, you can't even kill him. How about you worry about the whole burning thing after you actually kill someone first? Finally, the book that I'm putting in last place is A Special Place for Women. I read it and the entire time I legitimately thought it was satire, and then I read the end and I realized it wasn't satire. This book is about a secret club for elite women who are on the top of the corporate ladder. They're all girl bosses who need a place to vent and to wind down and to talk about all the misogyny that they face because sexism is bad. And yes, somehow we're not going to talk about the classism and white privilege for how these women got to be in those positions in the first place, because it's so much easier to just shit talk about men instead. So basically, like The Wing, there are actual clubs like this, primarily for people who work in tech, who work in design. They're supposed to be safe spaces for professional women. The thing about those spaces though is that they have a very expensive membership fee. You aren't allowed to be in this club unless you can afford the monthly fee. That obviously is going to ostracize women who cannot afford it. And usually those are women of color. And that is kind of replicated in this book because there is this secret club, but those issues are pointed out because the main character is an undercover journalist who decides to go into the secret club and try to expose them from within. As we follow her, we know that she is very cynical about this club because she points out the classism and the white privilege for many of these women that are allowed to be in there. But the deeper that she gets inside this club, the more she starts to realize that there are darker secrets that she didn't expect. The portrayal of the women in these clubs are so cartoonish that I thought, yeah, this must be a satire because you're exaggerating all of these things. They are literally caricatures of those women who are talking about being a girl boss and are talking about not making history but making her story. The main character is very outspoken about how much she's judging the other women for being so elitist. She's judging these women for talking about feminism but also ignoring about all these other factors about their privilege and everything. But instead, the book took such a weird turn. The second half of the book and what happens with the main character and the women is basically the stuff that the first half of the book made fun of in the first place. It's almost like the author made sure to write down all of these things in the first half by pointing out that this is classist, this is white privilege, this is white feminism, whatever, just to show that she was like self-aware about it. But the story went ahead and embraced those things anyway. It was like the author was like, ugh, white feminism, am I right? And then she went ahead and continued to be a white feminist. So I read this and I'm like, wait, so what the fuck happened to like all the criticisms that you made in the first half of the book? Like, are we just gonna forget all of that now? What was the point of even bringing it up then? Why didn't you just spend the first half of the book actually building up to whatever weird message you had at the end? Like, the message at the end, it's stupid, but if you're gonna have it, at least build up to it instead of trying to criticize it. There was no follow-up to the criticisms at all. So for those of you who are curious about the twist, stick around. I'm gonna tell you. If you don't wanna get spoiled, get the hell out of this video because this is how I'm gonna end it, okay? I'm gonna end it with this foolishness. It turns out that the top elite women of this club are actually witches. That's like the feminism here. They partake in this modern witchcraft, and that's how they get like the first woman mayor and all that kind of stuff. And the main character finds out that she can truly bond with these women through ancient spells and blood rituals. And then she gives up the whole idea of trying to expose them with her article because she realizes what truly matters in the end: friendship with women and being a girl boss witch. We kind of got hints of this leading up to like the twist because the entire time the women are talking about like astrology and they're talking about like doing tarot card readings and all of that kind of jazz. The whole time they were talking about that, I just thought that was satire. And then like the whole witch thing happened and I was like, okay, this is kind of getting weird. And then the main character decides to join the group of witches and I was like, oh, so we weren't making fun of this at all. Or maybe we were, but now you're like on their side. It ends with her, I guess, feeling more fulfilled because now she finally has that friendship with women that she has sought for all along. Girl, can't you just join like a book club or something? Or like, I don't know, go to a gym. You could have had a roommate or something. It's not that difficult to find friendships with other women, at least not to the point where you have to pay a membership fee for this weird fucking club and then join a coven of witches. They literally start dancing around a pit of fire completely naked. And the main character is doing this and she's like, oh my God, I feel so free. Finally, I feel so free. And I'm like, okay, I have totally misunderstood what the fuck this book was supposed to be about. But in my defense, I was led astray. This shit was just stupid. Clearly, as you can tell by the lighting, it is getting too dark, so I'm gonna conclude it here. Some books were a hit and some books were a flop. Typical month for me. So I'll see you next time for my July wrap up where I talk about a new book that I rated 5 stars. I'll see you soon. Unsubscribe from my channel and goodbye.